Joe Biden has received a lot of criticism over his border policy. I think it's fair to say the vast majority coming from Republicans, but he has his critics among the Democratic Party and on the left as well. And AOC has been one of the most outspoken ones. So I want to show you a bit of video recently of Representative Ocasio-Cortez talking about some of the conditions that led to what we're seeing right now, zooming out a bit from the situation at the border as we see it today.
We have this surge, which people are saying, and we have to address that term because it is wrong. And people are pushing back, when we talk about this. And when they say that, the reason why we shouldn't use that term is because this is not an invasion. And in fact, when you want to talk about that, we should be owning the fact that US foreign policy has contributed to the destabilization of these regions and of the very countries that are now mired in a lot of violence that these families and these children are fleeing. So we cannot use that term, not to police it, not to be politically correct, but because we know what the level and the steps of dehumanization lead to. We just experienced this last year. And I'm not going to allow the Stephen Millers of the world to pretend that he didn't do what he did and to act like this is the same.
Exactly. So look, I think she's done a very good job of laying out some of the differences in the policy. But that said, she has also talked about the conditions there and described them as currently as barbaric, as horrifying. And so she is hardly a sort of just like getting in line Biden defender on this. And I think that's what we need, is someone who can acknowledge the splits from the past where they exist, but also acknowledge when they might not be as big as some might want to imply that they are. What did you both think?
Yeah, I think we are, as AOC seemed to acknowledge, we're out there causing some form of chaos. And then when the consequences come our way, we're like, whoa. We're not ready for this, or we're trying to reject it or act like we had nothing to do with it when the role we played helped enable the situation. And knowing that the Biden administration was on pace to take in more than 17,000 unaccompanied minors in March, that's wild. And I guess greater than the record set before in May 2019. And we need to be prepared for these consequences of our actions abroad and not try to pretend that it should not happen or that it's a deficiency necessarily innate in other countries as opposed to a direct result of things that we've done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have a question to answer in this country. Are we going to be a nation that's transactional, or are we going to be a nation that's transformational? When AOC talks, she talks from the heart. She talks from a position of righteousness. Right is right, wrong is wrong. And she's labeled a radical by those who do not talk from the position of right is right, wrong is wrong. Politics has become so ingrained in double talk and corruption that when a person comes to the Capitol with a clear moral compass, that person is problematic and that person is extreme. If we were to eliminate the politics of it all and just act as if we're having a simple conversation with AOC, we would say AOC is right and this other foolishness is wrong. But once you provide the context and the lens of politics, all of a sudden, right can be argued as wrong and wrong can be argued as right. I appreciate the politics of AOC. I think it's the politics of progression. And I think eventually our entire country and the narrative of this country will get to that point if we make the right decision while we're right here at the split in the road, because we are in the fight of the soul of this nation.
Well, why don't we demonstrate the difference between right and wrong in a quick little back and forth? So let's start with a bit more right. It's Friday. Let's start on a good foot. So AOC tweeted, a lot of people who are just now suddenly horrified at the dehumanizing conditions at our border are the same folks who dehumanize immigrants and helped build these cages in the first place. When we tried to stop this infrastructure over a year ago, we were overruled by both parties. And that was opportunistically jumped on by Ted Cruz, a guy who all of a sudden really cares about the border, saying AOC explains the real Dem position: abolish ICE, full open borders, which would make the Biden border crisis, which she is desperately trying to turn into a hashtag, even worse. She says nothing else works. Really, last year we had the lowest illegal immigration in 45 years. This year we have the highest in 20 years. And as I alluded to on the damage report, I can't tell what's difference between 2020 and 2021. There's probably nothing systemic about the year that influences international migratory patterns and all of that. But anyway, she responded saying, Ted, this is pretty rich coming from someone who fled their own home and responsibilities during an environmental crisis to cross the border and seek refuge in Mexico. Also, you funded cages, expanded cages, and yet you're complaining about cages. You have no policy, just puff, which I have tried to love more and found that I cannot. It is just perfect. And yeah, so he took his little trip to the border and he hid in the brush. And then him and Lindsey Graham took a little ride on a boat and they put on vests and they were strapped in to make sure that they don't fall over the edge and everything. And suddenly they really care about the border. They don't talk much about any of the individuals or what would happen to those individuals if they were moved from the bad circumstance they're in these facilities to then being thrown out of the border as they would if they could. But they want you to believe that they care about it, that it's something serious for them.
No, they don't care at all. They want to continue to do as they please, have the rules only apply to other people. And just like you had acknowledged, and him crossing the border when Texas was going through dire straits, so he could go enjoy the benefits that are south of the Rio Grande. It's another example of the fact that we essentially have a nation that survives on hypocrisy, or at least in terms of our leadership. And they're not here looking to help the people at all or to make change, but rather to continue to fill their coffers and to play this us-them game.
Yeah, I lost all respect. And it's not a lot of people I can say this about, but I lost all respect for Ted Cruz when he let Donald Trump talk about his wife. And then he comes out hardcore on television saying, don't talk about my wife, this is blah, 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 like a tough guy. And then he becomes the greatest bootlicker of Donald Trump before the presidency and during the presidency. So I lost a lot of respect for that guy back then. Now he has the audacity to talk trash to anyone, especially AOC. He does not want the smoke from AOC. And Ted Cruz, one of the most, lack of a better word, hated individuals even inside of his own party because of his smugness and his arrogance and his unwillingness to believe that there's another way other than his way. So I don't like talking about the guy much, but we have to because he's in the news. But I have no respect for that dude.
Yeah, every move with him is obviously some calculated thing that he thinks is going to benefit him in the future politically. And sometimes his instincts are right. I mean, he is still the senator, regrettably, of Texas.
Yeah.
But he's just such a nobody likes him. He's the Matt Gaetz of the Senate, honestly. Nobody in his party even likes him. And I get that. So he greets the new president. The new president comes in, they do a COVID aid bill that's quite popular. Vaccination is going ahead of schedule, which is popular. The infrastructure bill, once people start talking about it, it's probably gonna be pretty popular. So they need something. But honestly, shipping a whole bunch of Republicans, putting them on a little dinghy and floating them on a river, that just to me reminds me of their immigration policy, which they may not seem to understand this, wasn't popular. People did not like the Trump administration immigration policy. And this is their best thing that they can distract with. It's just his instincts just really seem off in this case. I'm glad that there's a lot of attention being put on the border, even by Republicans, because maybe some conservatives watching this, when they see some of the footage, will for the first time actually care for the human suffering and not just think of it as some sort of invading army storming our borders. Maybe we'll get a little bit of that, a little bit of like accidental empathy. But if it leads to a better policy, if it does put pressure on Biden, that's a good thing because Biden is wrong. He's being like, it's an unprecedented number. I get it. They're being too slow. They have basically unlimited funds. They can house people in better conditions than they are right now. Right. And so Ted Cruz is awful. He's just the worst person. But hey, maybe accidentally, he can be a part of accomplishing something good here.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.